All right.
Should wear sunglasses.
Okay. Starting.
All right.
And we are live.
Hello, fans. From the industrial wastelands of Michigan to the fruited plains of Iowa, this is the American Greed Factory.
Why relate to his cheer perversity?
You are the dead. Remain exactly where you are. Make no move until you are ordered.
We burn them to ashes and then burn the ashes. That's our official motto.
Now we can see you. Clasp your hands behind your heads. Stand out in the middle of the room. Stand back to back.
Who can explain the fascination of fire? What draws us to it, whether we're young or old?
Here comes the chopper to chop off your head.
And welcome to the American Greed Factory podcast. This is Nathan.
And this is Conlon.
Tonight we have a big, exciting show for you. As always, we're going to talk about some movies, talk about some sci-fi video games, and some other sci-fi related stuff, and some more movies. And who knows, whatever comes up. Maybe I'll get my lighting situation fixed over here. Probably not.
Get you some mood lighting.
Well, I've tried all that.
Just a nice green hue.
What I need to do is put a green screen behind me with just hardcore pornography running. It's just, and not even acknowledge its existence.
Just immediately kicked off of YouTube.
I saw the first 3 seconds of your show. People still try that on YouTube. They still try to get away with that.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
Well, now they have it set up where you can just have pornography on YouTube as long as it's like you have a privacy setting and the only people that can view it are like invited to view it.
so a pervert circle.
Yeah.
Hey, friends, watch this porn I put on YouTube because I'm a complete freak because porn's widely available anyway, anywhere, but I want you to watch what I put
This
up.
is my own personal.
Know what I'm into.
No,
Serial killers.
one of the Giant Bomb podcasts, the Giant Beast Cast, where it's the East Coast crew.
Okay.
I think they're like offhandedly talking about orgies and like just how that'd be like an awkward situation, and then like, of course they have a large enough fan base where someone writes in, like 5 different people write in. It's like, this is what happens at an orgy.
By the way, if you were curious,
it's like it's all about consent and stuff like that. And one guy was saying like a small town, it's not difficult to like see a guy getting flogged like on Saturday, and then on Monday you just see him delivering the mail. It's like, hey Bobby, you just like put it off to the side. It's like, well, these are 2 separate things.
these aren't related at all. The last thing I'd want to do is see any of my friends fucking. Talk to them later, look them in the eye.
Well, the way they were writing in, they made it sound like it's just like a bar, but instead of fucking in the bathroom, you're fucking in like the guest room. So it's like people gather around, they drink, they talk, and they're like, and then somebody eventually goes, "Hey, you want to go fucking?" Like, yeah. And then they just peel off to a room somewhere. It's not just like, like nobody's like walking around like, I claim this hole to be mine.
I always imagined it'd be like that, Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I always imagine my orgies. A lot of Gregorian chants, really hot women and ugly men. Yeah, that's. I mean, but I only picture those. I don't. The groundwork you have to lay for that kind of stuff is just like, this is too complicated.
But I like the little detail they put in there, like for the post orgy, they like to have beer and nachos. Just available on platter on the table. It's like, are you done with this?
Yeah. Oh God. Still like the was it the Patton Oswalt orgy story where he's looking at the house
Yeah.
and people are having an orgy. It's a great story. It's off one of his albums, but it's like, yeah, that sounds like about right.
I mean, if you're in your 40s and you don't have kids, I guess what else are you gonna do?
Have some kind of hobby. That stuff only
Let's
sounds
wife
good
swap with the Thompsons.
that stuff only sounds good on paper. I can't. I know people that have done things like that. You know, because eventually they always want to talk about it.
Well, yeah, you have to imagine like there's a core group, and then there's these people that like filter in and filter out. Like, well, that's on paper. This sounds good. Nope. Never coming back. I have to move towns.
These people at work, not where I work now, but years and years ago, this was going on, and it wasn't people that I knew, but just like personally. But the one guy I did, and he was doing this stuff in some part of Michigan. It's like, yeah, me and my wife are doing this swinger stuff, and he was telling me all about it. And then, he kind of drifted out of my life, thankfully, and because it's like anyone who wants to tell people that's strange in my book right away. But then he came like a year later. It's like, oh man, I can't believe it. I'm getting divorced. I'm like, oh fuck, you didn't see that coming? You didn't think that was a problem there? It's like you and your wife are, going to parties, breaking off, and screwing other people. However you organize that, you and your wife are screwing other people. It's not the foundation for a solid marriage. When people are like, men being into that, I can see, because men are basically, that's the on switch is always on. But when women are like, yeah, I think that'd be interesting, that's a good sign your marriage is coming to an end. When they're like, yeah, sure, we'll go to some formal organized thing where I'll go screw some other guy and you go screw some other girl, and then we'll go home and act like nothing happens. Like, that never works. That never happens. Unless you're just married to people that are just like, total dead-eyed corporate profit monsters that you only got married because it's what your parents expected, and like people that have no feelings at all.
It's like the marriage in Mr. Robot.
yeah, exactly. That kind of, those people can do because there's no emotions there at all.
This is just a power struggle.
Yeah, that's what this is. Or it's kind of like the House of Cards people.
Yeah.
The husband and wife, the Kevin Spacey and the other lady. It's like, yeah, people like that can do things like that, but normal people that are just like, oh, I thought this would be fun, and now she wants to leave me. It's like, oh, no shit, dude. I mean, did you think this was a healthy exercise?
Yeah, I don't think you get married and then transition to that lifestyle. You have to like both be into that lifestyle and then get married if that's gonna work at all.
That's never gonna work. I mean, I'm sure there's someone who's like, you're wrong. It's like, no, I'm not. In the long term, I'm not.
I don't know. There's always been those real sex documentaries where there's like people where it's like, hey, these people are married, but they also like they have the wife has a boyfriend on the side and the husband has a girlfriend on the side, and that's just how it works, and they're okay with it. It's like, whatever, dude.
I guess if they're true, I've never met anyone where that worked, but then again, I have a small pool of people.
Well, there's also people who like allowed them to be filmed and documented. Like, you don't know, like, well, once the camera stopped rolling, like the facade gave way.
Well, I just like to actually, people like that claim that like this works for me. I would actually like to see, like, I don't want to know about that part of their life. I was like, what's the rest of your life like? Do you have hobbies? Are there things you enjoy? Or is it just this constant shark-like need to thing? What's the depth of your existence? Because I guarantee it's not very deep. I'm almost certain.
It's those people you hope they're an orphan.
Yeah.
It's like they're truly free. You have to answer to no one.
There's no mom and dad to disappoint. I'm a free agent in the world of cock. Oh, yeah. It's got to be something like that. Then some people are jealous, like, oh, I'd like to be that guy. It's like, would you really? Your whole life is just some elaborate ploy to
Again,
sex.
that's one of those like on paper things.
It's like, this sounds
It's like
great.
it's like a carnival game. It's like that looks like fun.
Yeah.
It's like, why am I broke and left unsatisfied?
What's this emptiness? And what kind of drugs and or food and or liquor can I fill this emptiness with? My need to make a connection with people. Yeah, there's a lot of budding serial killers out there. A lot of people that just, I don't quite have the guts to kill people, so this is what I do.
Yeah, the upside of psychopathy or psychopathy.
Yeah, these are the good aspects.
Well, I forget. There's something in a psychology book that's like about like somebody who was like, well, this guy's a psychopath, but he doesn't want to just like tear people apart like on a whim.
Yeah.
But he can do it and not shed a tear or sweat. So he's a really good surgeon.
Yeah, there's that one book I read. What was it? There's a few, but one of them was it was where that thing came out, like 1 out of 25 people are psychopaths. It was the book that started all that. There's been a lot of things since then that have refuted that or come up with different numbers.
Is that the same one where it's like 1 in 5 CEOs are psychopaths as well?
No, that was the John Ronson,
okay.
The psychopath test. But and really what he found out was that it's because then people were starting to worry that they were psychopaths. It's like, oh no, you'll know. I mean, it's not. But there are people that are total psychopaths that have no feeling, and then there's people that kind of like if you go to prison, like you're gay for the stay. It's like, hey, I'm not a psychopath, and I don't like have complete lack of emotional depth. But if I have to fill that role for a while, those are the kind of the on-off. They're the people that like they do have normal emotions and they like care about maybe their cat and a sibling, but everyone else in life is just a tool to be used. But they're not complete psychopaths. Like they would draw the line somewhere, and it's not just. But they found out there's a lot more of that than just 1 out of every 25 people has no emotional bonds with anything, their own interests. But there's a lot of people who fill that role until they achieve A, B, or C, and then they kind of have to unhook from that for a while because it will start to psychologically damage them. However they say it, I don't know. I don't understand all that shit. I always think of psychopaths are people who can kill other people. I mean, and I don't mean like from afar, but I mean like just work someone over with a knife and not really. The only concern they have is, am I going to get caught? Think about the fact that they just killed someone horribly, and it's like those thoughts never come through their mind.
I don't think I made these cuts efficient enough.
Yeah. There was too much screaming. That kind of ruined the moment for me. But yeah, they found out there's a lot more casual psychopaths than there are just the full hardcore Hannibal Lecter, let's eat your face off type people. And they say even people that they label as like a lot of serial killers, like they are psychopaths, but there's also, there's not a complete shark-like absence there. They're trying to fill some need. It's just personal.
Yeah.
But it's just the real cold-blooded killers that like, I get neither pain nor pleasure out of this. It's something I have to do to get through my day. Those are the people you got to watch out for.
This is the only way I can pump serotonin through my body.
Well, there was some about like snipers, or it's like one of the guys, some army guy wrote a book about. It's like if you had 100 people, maybe 25 people said they'd be willing to kill people with a rifle through a scope, and maybe 3 people you really, everyone else would have feelings about it, but they would still do it because this is whatever, it's my mission, A, B, or C. But then there's those 3 people out of 100 that are like, I want to do more of this. Like, have no thoughts about it at all. Those are the guys you really got to be careful.
Well, that On Killing book had like crazy statistics about World War II, where like something only like 15% of the people actually fired their rifles.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It's like, that is fucking crazy. Because everything you see, everything you read, would not indicate that whatsoever.
Yeah, that's
But then,
tough to imagine though.
but then like they like go through the statistics, like, yeah, the majority of killing done in all wars is through artillery, and then it's like easier for people. It's like, well, I'm just shooting at an indirect target. I never see the results of it. It's like, it's a lot easier for me to kill lots of people that way than
Well,
just shoot them up close.
It's like the guys that dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, they killed more people as a group than anyone in the history of conflict. They killed 250,000 people instantly. None of those guys killed themselves or went home and slit their wrists, because they didn't like individually kill 250,000 people. They just dropped some device that did it, and they're like, well, you maybe should have ducked that. You know, I don't know how they rationalized it, but none of those guys like went home and killed themselves.
Yeah.
But if you look at the guy, what was it? The guys who raised the flag at Iwo Jima, like 3 of those people killed themselves, or I don't think any of those guys ended up happy.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was something. There was some kind of comparison about that, because I read about that, and then there was something about how 3 years before the atomic bombs were dropped, there was an earthquake in Japan that killed 250,000 people, and almost nobody can recollect that. Like it's a historical fact, but it's like everyone remembers the people that died from the atomic bombs, but nobody remembers when the same number of people died, literally the same in the same time frame, because of these giant earthquakes they had in Japan. It's like, it's weird because we put different significance.
Yeah.
Because one thing was a force of nature and one thing was man-made. But yeah, that's I've heard things like that. Yeah, mowing people down with a rifle, I don't imagine that would be easy to do.
Well, I mean, they got those numbers up.
Oh yeah.
Because like they were shooting, because the problem in the book they hypothesized is that they're just shooting at targets that were like literal circles and stuff, and like in later on they started making the targets human shaped.
Yeah.
So, and then like around the Vietnam area they got that up to like, it's like 90% of the people could fire a rifle at a human being.
Yeah, that's good. And 100% of autonomous drones will fire at human beings. Strange stuff. Was there any correlation between people that like to hunt and people that were willing to shoot rifles at other human beings? Or did they ever do that study?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to say it might have been easier. I don't know, possibly, because there's like, I don't know, there's people that like they can separate that in a way where, like, you know, it's like, you know, here's this animal, I love this animal, and then you got to go out and just like, and then they kind of like just switch it in their heads. I got to kill this animal because it's gonna feed my family and shit like that. So
yeah, I always wondered if people that worked the land and worked on farms, that worked, because there's a lot of life and death on farms, just not with people.
yeah, because somebody, I forget, it was somebody was talking about, like, you know, just like animals being slaughtered on the farm being a regular thing, and like a kid seeing that, and then eventually they just kind of get used to it. They're not scarred for life or anything. It's just like, well, that's just how things are.
Yeah,
and they don't seem any different from anybody else.
Yeah, this isn't some unusual activity, but it is unusual for a lot of people. Because I knew a guy whose dog got hit by a car, and it was obvious that the dog was like, you know, its spine had been separated. It got ran over by a car, and I know this guy loved this dog, and he just walked to his Jeep and got a 45 and kind of moved the dog so it was on soft ground, just like, boom. And like, he was sad that the dog got hit, but it was just like, I'm just gonna have to shoot it, you know. Just, I mean, it worked. The dog instantly died. It didn't like roll around and scream. You know, if you had to empty a whole magazine into it, it had a different effect. But I was a little stunned at like the, you know, oh, action reaction. It's like, you had this dog for 11 years.
Well, I guess I better take the trash out.
Yeah. not to say that he wasn't sad or upset about it. He was, but it was just.
Well, if he truly didn't care, he just would have let the dog suffer to death.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, all points are expensive. But yeah, that struck me as like, oh, and this was a guy I knew who'd done a farm growing up, so he's like, oh, this must seem like the thing to do for him. Yeah, even though I have a gun, it wouldn't occur to me. Up, dog's hit. Safety off. Okay.
There's not a rock underneath this. A ricochet might.
Yeah, he moved it kind of
Yeah.
off the road. It's just
Yeah.
like, okay, it's like, oh, this is what needs to be done. Time to take out the trash, like you said. I didn't use a crossbow. Dong.
Thump.
That's legal everywhere now.
What?
Hunting deer with crossbows.
Was it ever illegal somewhere?
Oh, it was illegal for a long time.
Oh, crossbows.
Years.
Crossbows.
Yeah,
Okay.
crossbows. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it took some time. It used to be you had to be like crippled, but now they've changed it to where it's practically ubiquitous.
I mean, those compound bows they make now, it's like almost takes nothing to pull them back. So it's like, really, what are you saving here?
Yeah. I was always impressed with the crossbow. That guy had one, and it was a monster, but it was built on an old 22 rifle frame, same trigger, but it just had this giant, and it was driving aluminum shaft arrows through masonite blocks.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ! I knew these things were powerful.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in arrows.
Yeah, I was like, damn.
Yeah, I see. There's like some video somewhere where it's like, here's a 44 Magnum, and it's like a bucket of like sand, and like it goes through one bucket. Guy shoots an arrow, goes through like 8 buckets of sand.
Yeah, they actually have one you can buy. Like you can fit it, like take the upper off your AR-15, and this thing hooks right up to it, and it uses the same trigger on the AR-15, and it's one of those incredibly powerful crossbows. Like it's huge.
Yeah.
This guy was shooting it like they were getting stuck through trees and shit. But problem is, it cost $2,800. I was really interested until I saw the price, and then I was kind of like, what do you fucking do with a crossbow like that?
I'll use it once, and then it'll be a conversation piece.
Yeah.
It's like, well, there went $2,800.
Yeah, there goes $3,000. I don't make enough money to have that. It's like, that's $3,000 I'll never get back. But yeah, that was those are pretty wicked. And now it looks like, and they just I remember they used to have like tips, and then they had the razor blade tips, and now it looks like you're shooting like some kind of spinning death contraption. It's like these razors go in, and then they hook out like a harpoon. It's like, that's just brutal. Don't you hunt?
Yeah, now the arrows look like some Buckminster Fuller painting.
Yeah. Geodesic dome flying at you. Yeah, that's advanced quite a bit, that technology. Laser sights, scopes.
Yeah. And just the release thing, too. Where you you have the clip on your wrist, and you just like hit the clip, and that releases the bow for you. So you don't have to put out your fingers on it.
Yeah, like I said, I don't understand a lot of the science behind it. The only thing I know is at work, a guy got a crossbow, and he took the tips of his finger on his right hand, took 3 of them off with it because he had it away of the bow. They sewed him back on. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna keep your hands out of the way of that, that twanging death thing.
I remember I was learning to use a bow and arrow at Boy Scout camp, and the thing kept hitting my forearm. So it was just a bruise just all along my forearm because I didn't know how to use it right. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and apropos of nothing, I was the best shot in the world. Just bullseye, not hitting myself anymore. And I don't even know what changed. I can never do that again, but like, whatever.
The desire not to have pain. Pain is a motivator.
Well, it wasn't even that, because I don't even know. It was like, because like I think I was in an effort to try to stop it from hitting me, was causing it to somehow to happen more or something like that. Something weird.
Huh.
But yeah, I mean, that's also why, like, you see people who have professional bows and arrows, they have, like, guards on their arms, too.
Yeah.
To prevent that. Because now, you know, strings have a lot of, especially those compound bows, you can put
They'll
a
take
lot
your
of.
fingers off, yeah. If you're not careful, they'll strip you down to the bone. Something similar happened with a Warhammer I was trying to use.
Oh, the Warhammer.
It's a great weapon. It wouldn't get stuck in anyone. Didn't have to pull it out.
What is a Warhammer? Is it just a big flat hammer, or what am I thinking of? 'Cause
The kind I'm thinking of is it's about imagine like an oversized hammerhead,
okay, yeah, okay.
but it's on a long pike, and it's got a hook on the end of it, like kind of like you think would be like a claw hammer, but it was for pulling men off horses.
Okay.
It wasn't like the massive thing they have in fantasy stuff, because that would just be impossible to
Yeah,
wield.
yeah, yeah.
Or as soon as you swung it, it's like, okay, I'm open for all your sword attacks now. No, this was kind of a tall, small thing,
So
but it had a lot of force behind it.
what's the difference between that and a pike?
A pike is just like a spear that's hooked on the back for
Okay.
pulling men off horses. Same concept.
Then what's a halberd? Is that like an axe? That's kind of like a combination between an axe and a pike.
I think so. A halberd? Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'll have to look that up. But yeah, I just like the French Warhammer, because that was that was the advantage of the Warhammer over anything else, is it didn't get stuck inside a person. And even
Okay.
a spear would get stuck inside it.
Here's some blunt force trauma for your interior, for your insides. Just as effective.
Yeah, halberd's just an axe with a pike on the end of it, or with a hook on the everything. It was about pulling people off horses, and that was a lot. It was mainly anti-cavalry weapons. But you know, they all had because like the Warhammer sometimes had a spike on the top of it, so you could use it as a thrusting thing.
Yeah.
Because you didn't really want to fight a guy with a sword with a Warhammer. You know, again, you swing, you're wide open for attack, unless you had a shield. And almost everyone, contrary to what the movies show you, almost everyone had a fucking shield. Because once you deployed, stabbed, thrust, you were open. Your guard was open, so.
Movies taught us a lot of things. So.
Yeah, movies teach us all.
Movies teach us that, like, you know, people just charge at each other blindly.
Yeah, there's no fear of death or mutilation. What else did movies teach us? Well, yeah, that like a cop in San Francisco shoots people with a .44 Magnum.
Blow their head off.
No Department of Justice standard there. It's like, yeah, just use the biggest gun you can find.
Like, is it the second one or is the first one where he basically just talks about the .44 Magnum can like take your head clean off?
Yeah, I think it's the first one.
Is it the first one? Okay.
I think, is that the one where he says, because he gives that speech, and that's where he says, "Do you feel lucky?"
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because he's saying like, "There's no way."
I think they reiterate that speech in Magnum Force, because that was the sequel, right? Magnum Force.
I believe so.
And like, I think that one starts where it's almost like this James Bondian-esque, where it's just like panning along a .44 Magnum, and it's just like that speech about a .44 Magnum. So yeah, this isn't an advertisement at all.
Weirdly enough, I heard they used the .41 Magnum more in the movies.
What's a .41 Magnum?
It's a little hard. It's a smaller caliber, and it hits a little harder.
Huh.
Some guys in Indiana I knew that did deer hunted with pistols. They said .41 was better, but it's something that came out in the '50s, and it's kind of obscure now. There's not a lot. They still make them, but ammo is not readily available. Like, I can go to any gun shop and get .44 Magnum rounds.
Yeah.
41, that's a little harder to find. But I heard they used the .41 Magnum in the movie because was it the blanks or the percussive sound was a little better? I forget. There was some reason. I don't know if that was true in all the movies or just the early ones.
Yeah.
They make 44 Magnum defensive revolvers. They're big. They're
Yeah.
because they had the 44. What was it? The 44 Super. It was a sub Magnum, but it wasn't. They could never make the hollow points work right.
We got that one crazy gun. Isn't that like a snub? Was it that 454 Alaskan gun that's like really short?
Oh no, that was a 500 Smith. It was an anti-bear gun. Like it was a huge gun, but yeah, it had huge ports on it. It was like this long, or I think it was a 500 Smith. Maybe it was a 4.
Well, I'm thinking of that gun that The Rock had in that movie Faster or whatever, because it was like a short barrel gun but has like a crazy powerful round in it.
Yeah,
I think it was called like I think the gun was called like a 454 Alaskan or something like that.
that could be. They make those brush. They have a lot of things with the Alaskan tag on them.
Oh, okay.
Guy at work had just a massive.
Is that basically your anti-bear stamp? You put Alaskan on it.
Yeah, that's like anytime it's more of elk, bear, things like that. Because I know a guy had a round for a rifle, and it was the old tube-fed rifles, with the lever action rifle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like
Winchester.
it was like a 470 Alaskan or something. It was round as big as your thumb and about this long, and it's like, yeah, use those in Alaska for elk hunting, and it's like, okay, fun to shoot.
How thick are the hides on elk that they need a bullet that big? Basically,
Yes,
a Barrett 50 to hunt them.
Guess you don't want to piss them off. Just like a moose, you don't want to piss it off. Want to knock that fucker down.
Remember the scene from Tremors? Just fucking all those guns and then shooting it.
That's what you need. Where did the guy from Vice? They did a documentary, and they went to this place where they just shoot essentially artillery and fully automatic weapons. It's one of those. It's not Knob Creek, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
People, they're flying remote airplanes like the ones you build, and people would shoot them down. And the Vice, you know what their political beliefs are. But this guy at the end of it, he was like, "That's actually kind of fun." Of course, they had like the Dillon Mark 20 with tracers in it, the big rotary cannon, and shooting that at night. And it looked like something out of a science fiction movie because it looked like lasers. Because they said, "Oh, we put way more tracers in that than you normally would," so it was like every third one was a tracer.
Yeah.
It just looked like laser fire coming out of the. But what else were they? They were shooting like fucking small artillery from this, like the First and Second World War. Just load artillery up, fire. There's $200. Like, yeah, no shit. Where do you even get that? And they had a guy that was shooting, but he had a bunch of half-inch steel plates, and he made a jig for him. He had 10 of them. And he was shooting anti-tank rifles from the First World War. And it was like a solid tungsten round. And they said the bullets for this thing were like $75 a piece because they just don't make. It's just it was something you had to pound in the ground with a hammer, and then it was on like rockers.
Yeah.
Fed from the top. And he finally, after 2 dud rounds, he got one that worked, and it shot through like 6 of the plates. He put 12 of them on the stand. He shot through 6 of them with his World War I anti-tank rifle. And but it was solid tungsten.
Huh.
Like he recovered the bullet at the end of it because it just stopped and dropped down once it expended all its energy. But it was weird because he had a steel plate, like a 2-inch gap, another steel plate and 2-inch gap, and the hole got bigger. By the end of it, it was as big as your fist, and that's where the round stopped. And he picked it up, and the nose was kind of deformed and a little mushroomed out, but that was it. But again, it was a piece of tungsten. So, but yeah, that's there's a lot of people on YouTube that get up to some shit. It's like, Who's got the first? I don't really ask why. I know why because it's fun as fuck. My first question is who has this kind of money and time? It's like, yeah, we're gonna shoot. This is a Dillon Mark 12. You know, it's shoot 3,000 rounds a minute. We're gonna hose this car down for 2 minutes. Like, you just spent like $10,000 in fucking bullets. Or then the people that like, what was that stuff called? That tannerite.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just filled a water heater with tannerite. And we're gonna shoot it with a 50 caliber Barrett rifle from 200 yards, and it blows the camera and shit over. It's like, what do your neighbors think is going on? Oh, there's the McCluskey boys out again. Blew all the windows out of our house.
Why are they rich enough that they're in an area where they don't have neighbors?
Yeah, you couldn't be doing some of that shit with neighbors around.
So I really like seeing documentaries of Hunter S. Thompson, and like he lived in the middle of nowhere, and he'd just go out and start shooting his rifle or shooting a handgun at the mountain. The cops never came.
Didn't he live in Snowflake, Arizona, or something? Or
Yeah.
no, it was some northern or like western state. Yeah, I remember he'd be outside with his guns, shooting off into the woods. Yeah, that's people get up to some weird shit on YouTube. Well, it was like, who's the guy who puts on the Russian accent?
Not
He
sure.
pretends to be Russian.
I
He's
don't
not.
know. I
But
don't
yeah,
know.
he always has crazy shit. Like, here's a World War II Sherman tank. We're gonna shoot it at this target. He lives in Georgia. It's like, holy fuck! You're just gonna roll a tank out, huh? And he had like a 20 millimeter self-propelled cannon. He was driving it around. It had an engine on it, and it was a Russian gun, and it had a 55-gallon drum like a quarter of a mile away, and he shot at it once, and it was a little low, and he's like, "No, we're gonna up the ante," and this thing just and it's shooting these shells this fucking big. It's like, this guy must have won the lottery or something.
Right, yeah. I don't know. There's some of those like strange. I saw this. It was a sort of a mini documentary about this guy who has like the world's largest like private aquarium, and he built it all himself. He's like, yeah, this stuff usually costs like $20,000, but it didn't meet my specs, so I just built my own filtration system. And it's like, you know, like this is what, you know, this guy obviously does like custom work for like NASA or some other shit. Like, you know, he's doing one-off work that he's getting like thousands of dollars for that allows him to pay for all this shit. So he's just like one of those, you know, like whatever the Mythbusters guys do in their spare time. He's like one of those guys, except for making props. He makes shit for like, you know, industrial companies or whatever.
Yeah. I still like the people that own the military junkyard that put the JTOW. They found a surplus JTOW pack, and they put it on a car
Yeah.
on railroad track, because it started that myth about somebody made a rocket powered Nova,
Yeah.
and they of course they crashed it, but the real story was they put it on an abandoned stretch of train tracks because they knew you could never drive that down the road with a fucking something that's made to lift a massive, you know, cargo plane up into the air in short run. They knew they couldn't, but it became somebody found a NASA rocket and put it on a Chevy Nova, and they killed themselves. But the real story was these guys put a JTOW, which is pretty much a fucking rocket, and put it on a Nova, but they put it on, they built a frame, and it was on train tracks. And there was nobody in the car. They just ran it down the track to
Yeah.
see how cool it would look, because nobody was stupid enough to be like, yeah, what will 30 G's do to my body at, you know, sea level? So they knew that if they're smart enough to do that, they're smart enough to know they get pulverized. But yeah, that's it's funny the shit people come up with
Oh yeah, there's
or consider.
the Mythbusters are sort of back.
Oh really? What's going on there?
So remember the Build Crew?
And they all got fired, right?
Yeah, so they have a show on Netflix now called White Rabbit.
Okay.
And so basically they kind of do Mythbuster stuff.
Oh, well, at least they found jobs.
Yeah. Well, they always had jobs. It's just like,
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they're not hurting.
No, they all had
food stamps in the interim.
They all like, I mean, they actually like after they got fired, they're still doing like shit for like Discovery Channel and stuff like that. So.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and they also like they all work in the film industry making stuff, and I believe Grant made BB-8.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow.
I think he did.
Yeah. That's
he does a lot. He does a lot of robotic stuff. So.
That's the Korean guy.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to place him.
Grant Imahara, I think that's his name.
Oh.
And and there's Tori Belleci and then Carrie Byron.
So what do they do on White Rabbit? Just the same shit.
Kind of like the first one. They're like talking about superpowers, and then they kind of have like a rating system, and they like delve into like, oh, let's try to create a superpower with like technology, and then they kind of rate it afterwards and see how useful it is. So it's not exactly them busting myths. Of course, some of the stuff they like research, it's like based on true things, and then they try to make it like more effective or whatever. Because there's like one episode was about like breaking out of prison. And so like they're going through like kind of doing like a History Channel thing about these different prison escapes and which ones were like the most effective and stuff like that.
So it's a pretty good show, or?
It's all right. I'm only like 3 episodes in, so it didn't really catch me the way Mythbuster has, but it's totally fine. It's basically Mythbusters, but then again, I didn't watch like the last 4 seasons of Mythbusters, so not because like I didn't occurred to me as like, oh yeah, I should watch that. Even when it was in its final season, I didn't watch any of the final season.
Well, I read a book, not the book I was supposed to, but actually I listened to a book.
Oh.
I finished reading Nothing is True and Everything is Possible.
Oh, is that the Russia book you were talking about? Okay.
Yeah, it was written by a British guy, Peter Pomerantsev. His parents, of course, left Russia in the 70s, and he grew up in England. They immigrated to England, and then he went back to Russia because he spoke the language and became a TV producer.
In Russia?
Yeah, he made for... Well, they wanted Westerners. There was a time when they wanted... Because this was kind of after the chaos of the 90s.
Did he do that Everybody Loves Raymond Russia show?
No, he talked about that, but he didn't do that. He worked more for... I forget what the name of the... Damn it. I can't remember the name of the TV network. It doesn't matter. It's a Russian name. But he worked for the network where it's kind of like Russian reality TV.
Yeah.
But it's not reality TV. It's reality TV. People won't tune in. But if you just do a show about like these Russian, because I don't know, they have all these women over there that just look like supermodels. They're just growing on the trees over there. And they're all gold digging whores. Everyone knows that they're gold digging whores, including the girls. They become more whore like. And they did a show about it was, I think it was called Gold Diggers, was the American English translation, and everyone was fascinated with it. Like, exactly who these girls are, what they're doing. Once you get to know them, none of them are very interesting, and they quickly lose their minds on drugs and liquor and crazy shit. But they always, because there's no permanence over there. You're only because you're trying to hook up with rich guys.
Yeah.
And, once you're over the age of 25, you're past your sell-by date. So, it's just what series of relationships these girls get in. Half these guys are married. So they, it's like, ooh, what district of Moscow do you live in as a kept mistress? And, make sure he gets you a Bentley, because he can only buy you a Mercedes. He's a piece of shit. And, this basically... his experiences doing this were during the oil boom years from 2003 to about 2008. That's when Russia was just absolutely swimming in money. Like there were more billionaires in Russia per square mile than anywhere else in the world. But they're all kind of these pseudo billionaires, though, because once you make enemies of the government over there, your billionaire oligarch status goes away. So everyone's kind of in this whirl around Putin. And he talks about Putin a little bit, but he basically kind of reiterates some of the points that I've heard from other people. It's like he will always be the president. When he stops being the president, you're cut off from power. And if you're cut off from power in Russia, you're essentially dead. Like you don't have access to, you can't even get the lights turned on in your house, no matter how much money you have. So but they were talking about how the Russians in the 90s and the early 2000s had a lot of American business people there. And they wanted to learn about American business practices and American ideas. And they used words like stability, permanence, and structure, and all these great American business. And they sent their kids to like Harvard Business School and they all come back. But then they throw the Russian perversion into it, where it's just about corruption. You know, we can say it's stable. You know, this has currency, this has long-term value. None of it does. It's all, he says, the whole system over there is just illusionary. and they're just desperately trying to hold on to. He said like Moscow, they've done more building there than they have in any other city in the world. They've completely torn down and rebuilt Moscow twice since the 90s. Like some of the old communist stuff they'll keep because they think it looks cool, but then they'll just tear down buildings. And he says like there's weird things there because people in the city from like before the White Revolution, you know, I mean, before the communists took power, and then they'll talk about how, oh yeah, in the courtyard of that one house, that one mansion, the lady who owned the place had all her servants executed because she thought somebody stole something from her. And this happened like in the, you know, back in our colonial period is when that was going on. But then a priest comes by once a year and says a prayer, so it's a good place to live now. And it's just the weird little facts that they have about their life, and then how the mobsters became celebrities over there.
Yeah,
This one mobster, he's actually from Siberia, and he's a horrible mobster and he's a killer, but he wanted to make TV shows. And he wanted to make, like, he was really inspired by The Sopranos, but he said, you know, his comments were, because he was talking to this TV guy because he wanted to make a TV show. And he said, you know, they seem kind of weak, The Sopranos. You know, they weren't like tough enough. And, and the guy was trying to explain to him, was like, well, yeah, but in America, you just can't wantonly slaughter people in the streets. And they kind of, the law enforcement will come after you. And the guy's like, well, that's why you pay bribe. And it's like, nah, it doesn't really work that well when people are being killed indiscriminately. But so this guy, he couldn't really get a TV network to fund his show, but he had a bunch of money and cameras. So he decided he wanted to film his own Russian gangster show. And the Russian gangster, he was the director because he watched all these American movies like Tarantino and all that. He knew how to work the cameras and shit like that. He's like, I like this shot, I like that. But the dialogue was, he seemed like he was almost a semi-literate gangster who really liked films. The dialogue was really stilted and weird. And he just had other gangsters playing the parts. And these guys are not necessarily good actors, but this guy was saying where it got scary was they would like do car chases, and it's like there's no special effects. They're just doing a car chase through the city. They're just filming it while these guys are like bashing cars into each other. And they said like the shootouts and stuff, there's no such thing as blank ammunition in Russia. They were using real guns. Kind of like firing, like, okay, shoot to the left so you don't kill them. They were shooting real fucking guns with real bullets in them at each other. And the show kind of became a minor success, not because people found the stories compelling, but just because it was so weirdly done and scary, and everyone knew it's like, oh, they're not real professional TV people. They're just guys with cameras and a brutal mindset. But then he had some falling out with, you know, some government official, of course, and then so he was on the run. He was like a dissident, and then he, not the guy who wrote the book, but the gangster. He wanted to make underground films about the real Russia and things like that. And he was living in his car, and he couldn't come within the Moscow city limits, so he wanted to meet this TV producer. And then one day he showed up at the TV studio, and it's like, yeah, you're my friend. Make me an appointment with one of these guys. And of course, everyone there is scared. They know who this guy is. So he goes up and talks to the production people, and they like placate him, and they're like, oh, yeah, maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll do this. In the meantime, they're trying to get in contact with the cops to arrest him. But I guess he'd paid a bribe to somebody else so they wouldn't arrest him that day. And it was all kinds of stories like that. And this is contemporary up to about 2012 is kind of where this book ends. So, you know, because Russia, of course, is in all the headlines now because of whatever, you know, whoever they're trying to blame for the election failure. Weird how they're saying this. It's like the Russians took all these ideas from the West. It's like, oh, the communist shit's dead. We've got to be successful, but we've got to be Russian too. And it's almost like those two concepts don't go together over there. It's just impossibly corrupt.
Yeah.
Like it's unimaginably. And like this guy said, even though he was born in England and he grew up there, it's his parents told him, it's like Russia's always been like that. Whether it was the czars, whether it was the communists, whether, you know, however far back you want to go, it's always been bribes and horror.
Bribes and horror. Welcome to Russia.
And but yeah, that's it's kind of weird though how they talk about how the internet and everything over there, it's just nobody believes anything. Everything's a conspiracy. And everything's a lie. And it's like, oh yeah, you can see that going on here right now. It's like, yeah, anytime something happens, it's just like this. We had the nutcase shoot those people at the airport down in Florida. This was it Friday?
Yeah.
You can go on the internet anywhere you want to right now. It's like government agent, you know, some planned attack. And you don't have to look very hard to find it. It used to be, it's like, oh, I'm going to go to this conspiracy website. No, you can go to like regular websites, and they'll just reporting on like, oh, look at what the crazy people are saying. And it's like, wow. So, yeah, it was an interesting book. Be a good listen.
All right. What's it called?
Nothing is true and everything is possible.
All right.
And it talks about the weird like Scientology mysticism cults they have over there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of weird mysticism in Russia.
Yeah.
Because there's still like a lot of like there's a lot of old people there that aren't quite dead yet who don't believe in anything except for like magic, essentially,
sorcery. Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of, well, there's, like I said, there's so many of these young like model girls that are just running around that country. Because when you don't have a country that's, you know, based on corn syrup and Twinkies, you get a lot of thin, leggy people that, you know, and there's something about those people have hardy DNA over there. They must, because they live in a world made by lead and Chernobyl. So the fact that they don't have three eyes.
Hey, in the wintertime they give the kids ice buckets of ice and water, and they dump it on each other. But that's actually to harden their immune system.
Oh, really? They still doing that?
Yeah.
What immune system?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So it was probably something like, hey, this is probably cheaper than medicine, so let's do this.
Well, I remember when Grayson, we were talking once about Trump being elected, and he was kind of like, yeah, I think this is it. You know, I think our world is fucked. And I was like, oh no. So you got to remember, they had signs up in Russia, but in the famines between World War I and World War II, telling parents not to eat their children because they are the future. Said we haven't come close to that. But about 5 years maybe. But yeah, they actually had to remind people, hey, don't eat your children. They are the future. I don't know if that's true, probably. Must make posters to stop cannibalism. But I don't know if it's true or not. It sounds true. True enough for me. That's our political theme for 2017.
True enough for me.
True enough for me. It serves my purposes, so why not?
I can now carry on the plan of the day.
Guilt free. I've completely rationalized everything. So we saw a movie recently.
Yes.
We saw the latest installment of Star Wars. The first standalone Star Wars movie.
Well, sort of.
What was the other standalone one?
Well, there's that one Ewok movie and that Princess movie that sort of takes place in the Star Wars universe,
Oh, okay.
but it's not canon.
Yeah, so nobody gives a shit about it. It's like
Yeah.
the Star Wars Christmas special. It's like, yeah, that can't see it anymore. but-
Have you ever seen that?
no, I've never.
I think they have a riff track of that.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
No, I'll have to check.
Yeah, you
it
can
out.
find that. It's on YouTube. Yeah, yeah.
Heard it's absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I've seen part. I've heard somebody talk. I think they did a "How did this get made?" about it, and it was really weird. Because there's like some part where it's like there's some VR segments in there where like some grandpa Wookiee puts on like a headset and he's basically like watching VR porn like in the living room where like kids are having Thanksgiving and shit.
Sounds like the 70s to me.
Yep.
This will work. But anyway, so
Yeah, Star Wars Rogue One.
Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Like when they first ran trailers, it was a Star Wars tale. Why did they have to change that? There was some legal shit, wasn't there?
I have no idea.
Oh,
Yeah.
thought you might have known about it.
No, I didn't quite remember the change or a legal precedent for it.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up at some point.
It could be like an advertising thing where like very specific meanings and you can't just use them interchangeably.
Oh, okay. Ah, the thought police.
Hey, like if you ever see in the writing credits, the word and an ampersand have completely different meanings.
Explain that.
So I believe if it's the word, shit, now I forget of it. All right, it's one of the two.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go.
One of these two answers is right.
Yes. So I believe if it's an and, the word and, the two writers or more wrote the story together.
They actually spoke to one another and worked
Yes.
together in some way. Okay.
If it is an ampersand, it was like two different people or two different groups of people wrote these at different times and did not
the old-
communicate.
Fire the writers and bring in the punch-up crew. Okay. All right.
Well, no, a punch-up crew a lot of times cannot take credit for a screenplay because they will have to. You have to change a significant amount of it to actually get credit for writing a screenplay.
Wow. This is very complicated.
Yes, it gets weird.
Yeah.
That's why Hollywood's stupid. Well, this writer won't write what I tell him to write. It's like, well, the writer says it's stupid, and he's trying to do the best. It's like, fuck him. I got my writer.
Yeah, everyone wants to be Orson Welles. This is my vision. Kubrick didn't make Hollywood films because he couldn't deal with the whole system.
Probably, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he still made movies for Hollywood studios. It's just like, I think he
Filmed them all in England, though.
Yeah, but he was able to, I mean, gather the financing to like, because I believe like all the adaptations he did, he bought like the what do you call those rights? Shit. What do you call that? He got all the option rights for all that stuff himself.
Okay.
So he didn't go through a studio. So like.